Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News, or India's voice to the world. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj. Coming up in the next hour, over 2,000 people feared buried in massive landslide in Papua New Guinea. Rescue efforts underway in the region. Cyclone Remal weakens into a cyclonic storm after making a landfall between Sagar Islands and Kepupara. 14 National Disaster Response Force teams deployed. China, Japan and South Korea reaffirm denuclearization of North Korea and stability of Korean Peninsula after trilateral summit in Seoul. Israeli military claim to have carried out a precise strike on a Hamas compound in southern Gaza city of Rafah. Israel says strike carried out against legitimate targets under international law. As rescue efforts continue, over 2,000 people are feared to be buried under a massive landslide that swept over a remote village in Papua New Guinea. The UN agency claims that the death toll could be more than 670. Residents are still trying to reach to survivors after more than 72 hours to the landslide, as heavy equipments are unable to reach remove areas. Once a bustling remote hillside village in Enga province was almost wiped out when a chunk of Mount Mangalo collapsed in the early hours of Friday. The International Organization for Migration's Chief of Mission in Papua New Guinea, Shairan Aktoprak, said the remote location and nearby tribal warfare were hampering relief efforts, adding that treacherous terrain and the difficulty of getting aid to the site raises the possibility that few survivors will be found.
It is so deep, it's very difficult to recover the bodies from underneath the heavy debris. And the land is still sliding, rocks are continuing to fall. The pressure that is coupled with the heavy bulk on the ground that has not been affected. Neighboring, however, the debris is leading to cracks. And furthermore, to make things worse, there is water flowing underneath the debris and the floor, soil, ground on which the debris sits. So we fear that this mud can turn the ground into a slide.
All right, and Laura Westbrook, DD India correspondent, joins us for more from Hong Kong. Laura, over 2,000 people fear to be buried under massive landslide there. And what is the current situation, if you could just tell us, and how about the rescue efforts as well?
Yes, Papua New Guinea has informed the UN that more than 2,000 people were buried in this massive landslide in the remote area of Enga province. Now, this occurred in the early hours of Friday morning, and that is when many people were asleep and houses have been buried. And it's according to reports, the landslide has reached almost a kilometer along. So that just gives you an idea of the scale of this. Now, the official death toll jumped to 670, but it now is believed that many more people who were buried could be presumed dead, and that death toll could rise much further. The United Nations has said that the situation remains unstable. They are very much monitoring the situation, and additional challenges mean that the main road to get to this remote area is cut off. You can only get there by helicopter at the moment. So The United Nations says that the need for assistance would be long-term and complicated. It's called on the international community to assist and provide support. And we have heard from China in its daily press briefing today, which has offered its assistance in helping the relief efforts.
All right, Laura, tell us about the government's action plan now for people in nearby areas. We heard around 250 houses nearby have been abandoned by the inhabitants who had taken temporary shelter with their relatives and friends, and some 1,250 people have been displaced.
Yes, that's right. The government has been focusing on evacuating people in the neighbouring areas. That's because it's still raining, so conditions are quite bad. And there's also worries that the water flow that is underneath the ground is making the ground more unstable. And that poses a risk not just to rescuers, but also to survivors as well. And even with the rescue teams can get there, there are many challenges that they face. Another challenge is bringing in heavy equipment. It's been slow to get there. So in the meantime, people have been using sticks and even their bare hands to try and dig for survivors. According to reports, houses and people are buried in 8 meters of debris that includes boulders and even trees. So that just gives you an idea of how difficult it is to reach the people who are buried. But there is one bit of good news. We've heard reports that a couple who were buried for more than 8 hours have been rescued.
Okay.
But the fear is many more are still in the rubble.
All right, this is a developing story, Laura. We'll keep taking updates from you, but as of now, thank you so much for joining in and thank you so much for your analysis. The severe cyclonic storm Remal, which made landfall between the coasts of India and Bangladesh on Sunday night local time, has weakened into a cyclonic storm, leaving significant destruction in its wake. It's predicted to weaken further into a deep depression during the day. Several districts of Assam and the northeast are on high alert. Kolkata, the capital of eastern Indian state of West Bengal, is witnessing heavy rain and gusty winds after the cyclone made landfall. More than 110,000 people from coastal regions, including Sundarbans and Sagar Island, have been evacuated. India's national and state disaster response forces are clearing the roads after trees were uprooted amidst heavy rains and gusty winds. The Indian Coast Guard was monitoring the situation. Ships and hovercraft are on standby to respond in the event of emergency. In an exclusive interview with DD India correspondent Tapas Bhattacharya, the DG of India Meteorological Department, Dr. Mrityunjay Mohapatra, known as the Cyclone Man of India, noted that this cyclone has accelerated the onset of the monsoon in India.
Joining me is the Cyclone Man of India, Dr. Mrityunjay Mohapatra, to talk about the Cyclone Remal that is currently prevalent in West Bengal and Bangladesh. Sir, we have seen this particular, map satellite image. There is a cloud cover, a convective cloud is over Bengal and Bangladesh. Give us more about this, and when do you think this can dissipate further?
The severe cyclone storm Remal, which crossed Bangladesh and adjoining West Bengal coast yesterday midnight, between Sagar Island and Khewpara, moved north-northeastwards, and today morning it has weakened into a cyclonic storm. And currently the associated wind speed is about 75 to 85 km per hour, gusting to 95 km per hour over the coastal Bangladesh and adjoining areas of coastal West Bengal. Now it is expected that it would further move north-northeastwards, and by afternoon of today it would weaken into a deep depression. And its wind speed will be 55 to 65, gusting to 75 km per hour near the center.
Red warning issued?
We have issued red color warning for northeastern states, especially Assam, Meghalaya, Manipur, Mizoram, Tripura, because of the expected wind speed of 50 to 60 km per hour, gusting to 70 km per hour. And rainfall, we are expecting widespread with heavy to very heavy rainfall at a few places and extremely heavy rainfall exceeding 20 centimeters in some places.
We see this cloud convection out here. Do you believe that this will help in the onset of monsoon? Do you believe that it's going to strengthen the monsoon on India?
The advance of monsoon is certainly has been favored by the development of this particular cyclone over the Bay of Bengal. The more area in the Bay of Bengal has been covered by the monsoon, but in Arabian Sea, it has not yet progressed further. We are expecting that, as we predicted earlier, around 31st May, the monsoon can advance towards the Arabian Sea region. But further updates will be provided on daily basis.
Much appreciated time. So that was the Cyclone Man of India, Director General IMD, saying that the cyclone will lose its intensity by the noontime, and one expects that by 31st of this month we will have the monsoon arrival on an onset of monsoon in India. With camera person Vishwabandhu, this is Taposh Bhattacharya for DD India from Delhi.
DD India correspondent Dibyendu Mondal reports from Kolkata on how the cyclone Remal has impacted life there. Has an exclusive ground report from Kolkata.
Cyclone Remal, which made a landfall in the South 24 Parganas of West Bengal, have impacted the capital city of Kolkata. And if you can see behind me, this street which goes to the main junction of Park Circus and Park Street and connects the main city of Kolkata has been completely inundated. The vehicular traffic, if you can see behind me, are crawling with a speed of about 10 to 20 km per hour because of the waterlogging. Several trees have been uprooted in different parts of the city of Kolkata, including electricity poles have been uprooted, and the civil administration of Kolkata are taking adequate measures to remove the trees. The NDRF have also been called in to clear the uprooting of the trees that have taken place in different parts of the city. The severe cyclonic storm has now turned into a cyclone and it will further develop into a deep depression, causing heavy to very heavy rainfall in several districts, including Kolkata, South 24 Parganas and North 24 Parganas here in West Bengal. The cyclonic storm has caused a lot of havoc and inconvenience to the people, with trains being stopped that comes from the suburban cities to the capital of Kolkata. Flight operations had also been halted till about 9 a.m. in the morning today. However, the flight operations have resumed, but what we hear is that the flight operations are taking off very carefully, with the trains being stopped. People are facing inconvenience on a Monday morning. With camera person PK, this is Dibyendu Mondal from Kolkata for DD India.
And strong storms and tornadoes swept through various states of the United States during the weekend, claiming 22 lives, injuring people and leaving widespread destruction in their wake. At least 15 people were killed, with over 100 injured in northern Arkansas after the severe tornadoes on late Saturday. In another news from Texas, a powerful tornado struck communities in the north-central part of the state on Saturday night, claiming 7 lives, including 2 children. At least 100 people have been reported injured. With more than 200 buildings destroyed, nearly 38,000 people were left without power in the aftermath. And a strong tornado ripped through northeast Oklahoma late Saturday, damaging buildings and bringing down power lines. No casualties have been reported in the state so far.
There are, in the midst of total devastation, the bright points are all of the people coming together and taking care of one another and looking out for their neighbors and their community and doing whatever it takes to help get people taken care of. And that's exactly what we're going to do.
And still to come on DD India Newshour. US lawmaker Michael McCall visits Taiwan, meets President Lai Ching-te. Following a series of eruptions of different volcanoes in Indonesia, Mount Ibu erupts. State of emergency has been lifted in French-ruled Pacific island New Caledonia, but the airport remains closed till June 2.
versus facts. In-depth news and analysis with experts who will help you decide why this election matters. DD India is the main election headquarters with numbers most accurate, data most reliable, and viewership across the platforms. Stay tuned to the Great Indian Election only on weekdays at 8:30 p.m. IST and 1500 hours GMT.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj. China, Japan and South Korea reaffirmed that the denuclearization of North Korea and the stability of the Korean peninsula after the trilateral summit in Seoul. Top leaders of the three countries held a rare meeting with efforts to revitalize three-party free trade agreement negotiations, which has been stalled since 2019.
We will deepen economic and trade connectivity, strengthen cooperation in regional industrial and supply chains, and promote the resumption of negotiations on the China-Japan-South Korea Free Trade Agreement.
South Korea and Japan called on North Korea not to carry out a planned rocket launch carrying a space satellite using ballistic missile technology.
We affirmed that the denuclearization of the North Korea and the stability of the Korean peninsula are in the common interest of our three nations. I also requested that the two leaders continue to provide assistance for the immediate resolution of the abduction issue, and they expressed their understanding.
The so-called satellite launch that North Korea announced today is a clear violation of UN Security Council resolutions, and the international community should respond firmly.
North Korea is planning to launch a rocket carrying a satellite toward the Yellow Sea and east of Luzon Island between May 27 and June 4th. Japan on Monday demanded the cancellation of North Korea's planned satellite launch via diplomatic channels in China. South Korean military also conducted attack drills deploying about 20 aircraft and said it is fully prepared for North Korea's possible provocations. Officials from US, Japan and South Korea held phone talks on North Korea's satellite launch using ballistic missile technology and agreed that it would violate UN resolutions and pose a grave threat to regional security. All right, and Chris Gilbert joins us from Tokyo. Chris, first three-way talks in 4 years between these three countries with a focus to revive trade and security dialogues. Tell us about the three-party free trade agreement negotiations and what else can we expect from here?
Well, most importantly, we can expect talks, and as unexciting as that sounds, is actually quite crucial for diplomacy in this part of the world. Experts have often told me that the most important thing is that these leaders are in the same room talking. We've heard this with Wang Li, China's Foreign Affairs Minister, and Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State. We've heard it between Xi Jinping and Fumio Kishida, the leaders of China and Japan respectively. And we're hearing it again now that communication is the number one essential tool to avoid, well, complications, confusions. We saw this with the Chinese air balloons that went over the US last year. There was a miscommunication about that, and so we're going to see more talks from here. Japan is intending, it says, to continue the progress that was made on Monday's summit when it hosts the 10th trilateral talks here in Tokyo next year. And until then, there is going to be more second track talks, more third track talks, and what that means is not necessarily the leaders, but their officers or other diplomats or other bureaucrats between these countries are going to be hammering out details behind the scenes, negotiating and working towards things like this long, elusive free trade agreement. And on that note, trade between these countries is also crucial. Because while Japan and China may be security challengers, they are wedded through trade. There was $230 billion of trade between them in 2022. Both Japan and South Korea had China as their largest trading partner last year. So trade is absolutely crucial, and building on that going forward to maintaining stability in the Indo-Pacific, according to experts that I've been speaking to.
Okay. Chris, now South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol and Japanese Prime Minister also called on Pyongyang not to carry out a planned rocket launch carrying a space satellite, which Pyongyang is barred from developing under multiple United Nations resolutions. Yoon Suk-yeol in fact said that international community should respond decisively to any launch by Pyongyang. Could you give us some details on this?
It's a fairly standard response from Yoon Suk-yeol. He is the leader who, in his campaign to become president in 2022, didn't rule out a preemptive strike against North Korea. He is incredibly front-footed and assertive in these matters, and acting decisively is the kind of language that we see both from North Korea and South Korea in terms of responding to each other's aggressive gesticulations towards each other. Look, the US and its allies do see the rocket launch as an act of, or as an offence against those UN Security Council resolutions you just mentioned. Pyongyang says they're not, as it comes under its civilian space program. However, as political scientists very quickly point out, there is a very, very thin to non-existent line between civil society, the military, and the government in North Korea. Effectively, everything that the government does is a military act, and so it's a hard argument for Pyongyang to sell that it's a civil mission. It has openly said, however, that while other countries in the world are free to launch their satellites, for some reason Pyongyang is not free to do so. It does want to, and it has said it wants to expand the scope of its surveillance against forces it perceives as hostile, such as South Korea, which is openly hostile, such as the United States, which parks nuclear aircraft carriers in Busan, just south of the DMZ. And so that is why it is launching these satellites. But for now, it is against the UN Security Council resolutions. And from this trilateral summit today, Fumio Kishida of Japan has said that they want to stabilize the peninsula in everyone's interest. And the Premier of China, Li Qiang, has also said that discourse is the way to political settlement on the Korean Peninsula.
All right, thank you so much for joining in, and thank you so much for your analysis. US lawmaker Michael McCall visited Taiwan's capital Taipei on Monday, where he met newly appointed President Lai Ching-te. Michael, in a statement, called China's intimidating drills as a move showcasing their disinterest in peace. In response, China has told US to stay out of Taiwan affairs.
For just 3 days after your inauguration, Mr. President, the forces of China conducted intimidating military exercises, sending aircraft, 111 aircraft and 46 warships, demonstrating that they are not interested in taking Taiwan by peaceful means, as agreed to in the Taiwan Relations Act of 1979.
Meanwhile, Taiwan's National Defense Ministry on Monday detected 21 Chinese military aircraft, 11 naval and 4 Coast Guard vessels near its territory. 10 out of the 21 Chinese military aircraft entered Taiwan's air defense identification zone. In response, Taiwan has deployed naval vessels and coastal missiles. France's President Emmanuel Macron is in Germany for a 3-day visit, followed by a bilateral meeting as the European Union's 2 biggest powers seek to show unity ahead of next month's EU parliamentary election. Along with German President, Macron laid wreath at the Berlin Holocaust Memorial. Macron's trip is first by a French president in 24 years. Macron warned against a slackening of support for Ukraine in its defense against Russia.
Être du côté de la paix aujourd'hui, c'est donner.
To be on the side of peace today means giving strength to the law peace, but not capitalization. Peace is not an abandonment of principles. We have too often seen this confusion in collective debates. Peace means enabling a country to defend its borders and sovereignty. International law to build a lasting peace is the camp we have chosen, that of the law for the long term.
And state of emergency has been lifted in French-ruled Pacific island New Caledonia, but the airport remains closed till June 2nd. Last week, French President Emmanuel Macron visited the region after at least 7 people were killed in riots. The original inhabitants, called the Kanak community, are opposing a new bill adopted by lawmakers in Paris that will allow voting rights to French residents living in New Caledonia for more than 10 years. And a growing number of voters in the UK say that climate change and environment are important issues facing the country. With a parliamentary election scheduled for 4th of July, political parties have been keen to emphasize their green credentials. But some critics argue that the UK is falling behind when it comes to a bold environmental policy. Issues such as healthcare and cost of living are deemed by many to be more important, which means that green policies are being squeezed out. John Beaver reports. Have a look.
5 of the 10 hottest summers on record in the UK have been in the last 20 years. Climate change is impacting the lives of those in the UK, but there's frustration that not enough is being done by successive governments. Climate campaigners have recently won court cases against the government to force them to implement more ambitious policies to cut carbon emissions.
We know that it's a very visible way for climate campaigners to put legal pressure on the government to increase the ambitiousness of its policies, and extremely broadly over time we can say that the British government has become more ambitious, particularly in terms of promoting renewable energy production here in the UK.
Domestic energy production is also tied to energy security and not being as vulnerable to price shocks caused by international events like the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But wider environmental policies have grown in importance.
The 1979 Conservative manifesto, when Margaret Thatcher came to power, was almost 9,000 words long. The word environment was only used 5 times. Much has changed in the last 4 decades, and now well thought out green policies make up a key part of any modern day manifesto.
For the past 5 years, the environment has been picked by around 20 to 30% of people as one of their top 3 issues facing the country. But it still lags a long way behind other key issues such as the economy, health and immigration and asylum. That might explain why the government has been accused of watering down their climate commitments, arguing they're too expensive and could hamper economic progress.
The UK has one of the most ambitious climate targets of any of our international peers. Yes, exactly. The UN GAP report, which shows the UK is expected to reduce emissions at the fastest rate between 2015 and 2030 among the G20 group. We remain incredibly ambitious about climate change. We've over-delivered on all of our carbon budgets to date, and the work shows that we will continue to do so.
But the opposition Labour Party has also been accused of short-sightedness in dropping their own ambitious environmental policies for being too expensive. Despite a growing number of voters saying they're concerned with the environment, the current financial pressures mean green policies are often being overlooked in the build-up to the next election. John Beaver in London, reporting for DD India.
All right, let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. Following a series of eruptions of different volcanoes in Indonesia, Mount Ibu erupted in the early hours of Monday. 7 villages in nearby areas were immediately evacuated as the eruption was expected to impact a 7-kilometer radius area. Egypt's first eco-friendly electric taxi started its services in new administrative capital near Cairo. Initiated by Ministry of Transport and owned by its affiliated company, the project has launched 10 taxis with plans to roll out a total of 145 electric taxis in subsequent phases. A Vietnamese youth has been honored by listing in the Under 30 Asia 2024 list of the Forbes magazine. Dong Wan Hung's YouTube channel, Mother's Cuisine, has earned the YouTube Golden Button with more than 1 million subscribers. And still to come on DD India News Hour, we tell you all the updates from the general elections 2024 in India. Stay tuned. And in Delhi fire incident, the owner and a doctor of a child care unit arrested.
Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj. A quick recap of the headlines once again. Over 2,000 people feared buried in massive landslide in Papua New Guinea. Rescue efforts underway in the region. Cyclone Remal weakens into a cyclonic storm after making a landfall between Saga Islands and Kepupara. 14 National Disaster Response Force teams deployed. China, Japan and South Korea reaffirm denuclearization of North Korea and stability of the Korean Peninsula after trilateral summit in Seoul. Israeli military claim to have carried out a precise strike on Hamas compound in southern Gaza city of Rafah. Israel says strike carried out against legitimate targets under international law. In the latest from the Israel-Hamas conflict, Israeli military claimed to have carried out a precise strike on Hamas compound in the southern Gaza city of Rafah and took out two of the group's commanders. Israel said that the strike was carried out against legitimate targets under international law through the use of precise munitions and on the basis of precise intelligence that indicated Hamas's use of the area. Further, Israel said that it was aware of reports indicating that the strike caused a fire and civilians in the area were harmed, adding that the incident is under review. Earlier, Israel's military said that 8 projectiles were identified crossing from Rafah in the southern tip of the Gaza Strip. A number of the projectiles were intercepted, but no casualties were reported. Israel argues that the UN court's ruling allows room for some military action in Rafah. Israeli military's international spokesperson Nadav Soshani said that their mission has always been to protect civilian lives.
Let's talk about it. Last night, the IDF thwarted 2 rocket launchers aimed at Kerem Shalom humanitarian crossing. Throughout the day, we facilitate the entry of over 100 humanitarian aid trucks into southern Gaza through that same crossing. This is just a part of hundreds of aid trucks going into Gaza through additional crossings today. What was Hamas doing at that same time? Hamas launched a barrage of rockets towards central Israel. Millions of civilians in Tel Aviv, Herzliya, and other cities had to run to shelter as Hamas fired rockets. It has been almost 8 months of war, and each side still has the same intentions. Hamas still holds 125 hostages. Hamas still targets as many civilians as possible with no care for the people in Gaza. We are still doing everything possible to facilitate the entry of aid into Gaza for the people of Gaza. The IDF is fighting Hamas, not the people of Gaza.
All right, and Sarah Coates joins us from Tel Aviv for more on this. Sarah, Israeli military claimed to have carried out a precise strike on a Hamas compound in Rafah. Tell us some updates regarding that.
Hello there. Well, according to the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry and also medics on the ground, this strike occurred northwest of Rafah in an area that was designated by the Israeli military as a safe zone. We do know that many people were already crammed down into this Rafah area that was given that it was declared a safe zone some months ago, but these people in a number of areas, they've been given orders to leave to go to other areas like Al-Mawasi on the coast. Now, there are very confronting pictures coming out from the ground that show people pulling charred bodies out of containers. Doctors say that this container was an area where many displaced families were sheltering. Now, we do have a statement from the Israeli military. It says that an IDF aircraft struck a Hamas compound in which significant terrorists were operating, saying that the strike was carried out against legitimate targets under international law through the use of precise munitions and on the basis of precise intel. Well, the military says that it eliminated Hamas's chief of staff in the West Bank, also another Hamas operative from that same area, acknowledging that several civilians have been injured, saying that an investigation will continue into exactly what happened.
Okay, Sarah. And on the other hand, Hamas claims that it has launched a big rocket attack at the Tel Aviv area in central Israel. Could you confirm it?
Certainly, this happened at around 2 p.m. local time yesterday afternoon, the first time in 4 months that rocket alert sirens have been activated in central Israel, including right here in Tel Aviv. Now, there was a barrage of some 8 missiles. They were launched from Rafah, which is the area that I just did speak about, into Israeli territory. We can confirm that a number of these missiles were intercepted by the Iron Dome missile defense system. Another couple weren't intercepted. One of those did hit a home in Herzliya, which is a little further north of where I am standing now. Now, with regards to that intercept on the home, or that hit on the home, I should say, one person did sustain minor injuries and was taken to hospital, but it was certainly very, very concerning. People on the ground were used to a sort of sense of calm after 4 months of no rockets. There was a lot of concern that these may have in fact come from Lebanon, fired by Hezbollah. So certainly it really shattered this sense of calm on the ground here, and it was extremely very concerning, of course, to these residents.
All right, Sarah, thank you so much for your analysis. Well, in the latest updates in Russia-Ukraine conflict, Russia claimed to have gained control of a settlement in Ukraine's Kharkiv region on Sunday. The Russian Ministry of Defense reported that Russian forces have secured advantageous positions in various directions and successfully targeted Ukrainian armored vehicles, artillery systems, and other objectives. It has also intercepted a number of missiles, rocket projectiles, and drones of the Ukrainian army. While Ukraine stated that it has taken all necessary measures to weaken the Russian offensive, according to the latest updates from both sides. Now, more and more army brigades in Ukraine are turning to marketing to attract more troops to join the fight against Russia. They are churning out recruitment ads that look like movie posters or film trailers. After more than 2 years of the war, the demand for more soldiers is higher than ever as Russian forces continue to slowly but steadily advance in the east. Magumilim speaks to two designers behind some of these ads. Take a look.
A soldier facing off a zombie and eyes that glow in the dark. These are not characters in a science fiction film, but real soldiers fighting in a real-life war.
Posters like this one behind me have popped up all over Ukrainian cities away from the front lines. They are there to remind people that they are needed on the battlefield.
Many of these ads are designed by soldiers themselves. Irina and Pavlo, who are members of the 59th Brigade, say they have been making them since autumn of last year. With barely any breaks from the battlefield, their car has become their workspace.
We analysed what other brigades were doing and what was currently relevant in the advertising market. We also analysed the colour scheme, how it affects other people, because this is new to us. We're not designers. But we gradually learned and invented our own formula, how we would like to present the brigade so that it distinguishes our brigade from the others.
They were inspired by the steppe predator, animals that roam the grasslands in southern Ukraine.
The merits of our fighters, defenders and female defenders were earned on the steppes in the south. That's why there's a blue person with eyes that glow like a steppe predator.
Ukraine has been struggling to mobilize more troops to replenish its depleted ranks after more than 2 years of war. That is why many brigades like Irina and Pavlo's have taken things into their own hands. not only to speed things up, but to give potential recruits more agency in selecting a job that suits them most. Many of these posters have QR codes that lead to websites advertising positions as varied as medics, engineers, sappers, and drone pilots, dispelling concerns that soldiers are immediately thrown to the front lines.
Judging by how much information is sent to us on Instagram about these posters, billboards and videos, they really work. We now have a lot of applications through our website.
Doing like this.
It is often said that the best soldiers are already fighting. But brigades believe there are more roaming the cities, and that these posters will motivate them to take the next step. Megumi Lim in Kiev reporting for DD India.
And let's get you the latest on world's largest election in India. "57 constituencies across 8 states and union territories will go to the polls on 1st of June in the 7th and last phase of India's parliamentary election. 904 candidates will be in the fray, 13 seats each in Uttar Pradesh and Punjab, 9 in West Bengal, 8 in Bihar, 6 in Odisha, 4 in Himachal Pradesh, 3 in Jharkhand and 1 seat in the union territory of Chandigarh will go to the polls on 1st of June. Campaigning intensified for the final phase of polling on 1st of June. Political leaders are holding rallies across the country. BJP leader and Home Minister Amit Shah is on the campaign trail in Kushinagar, Uttar Pradesh, and is also going to address rallies in Balia and Gosaipur in Uttar Pradesh. BJP President JP Nadda will visit Varanasi, where he will hold a convention and meet locals. For its part, the opposition is making a last-ditch attempt to woo voters in its favour. Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge and Congress leader Rahul Gandhi are on the campaign trail in Odisha's Balasore. Rahul Gandhi is also going to hold rallies at Patliputra and Ara in Bihar. Congress General Secretary Priyanka Gandhi is addressing 2 public meetings at Kangra and Chamba in Himachal Pradesh. The northern Indian city Varanasi in Uttar Pradesh will go to the polls in the 7th and last phase of India's election on 1st of June. Campaigning is on in full swing. Prime Minister Narendra Modi seeks re-election from the city. Deepika Mathur reports.
As we enter the last and the 7th phase of Lok Sabha election 2024, Team DD India has now reached beautiful Varanasi. The fight here is between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Congress candidate Ajay Rai. Now, how the fight is going to shape up, how they are promising to woo the voters, and what are the kind of rallies that are taking place across the streets of Varanasi, we'll get you all the latest from Ground Zero.
Varanasi, the beautiful city famous for its temples, ghats and its culture. Ever since 2014, the political quotient of the seat has also taken a giant leap when PM Narendra Modi decided to contest for the lower house from this seat. From here, it will go to polls in the last phase on 1st of June. It seems like a fitting finale to the high decibel, no-holds-barred election campaigning witnessed in Uttar Pradesh so far. PM is eyeing a record 3rd straight term in office and 3rd consecutive win from Varanasi. The Congress is, however, claiming otherwise.
This time, Congress is going to win the Lok Sabha election from Varanasi. We cannot see any BJP official campaigning in rural areas, and when we went inside, we saw that people are in favor of our candidate Ajay Rai.
On the other hand, BJP doesn't see a challenge at all, let alone any chance of a close fight.
There is no challenge. BJP is winning with great numbers. A lot of infrastructural development has taken place across India and especially Varanasi.
Jitin Prasad also appealed to the voters to come in large numbers and exercise their franchise.
I appeal to all the voters to come out in large numbers and exercise your right. Come and vote on the 1st of June.
As campaigning enters the final lap, all eyes in the last phase will be on Varanasi. Amidst the religious chants and sacred hymns, the city is experiencing the exhilarating last lap of the high decibel pitch by the political parties.
So now you know how the political fight is shaping here in Varanasi amid a heated political battle and other rallies which are currently taking on, and they will continue until the silent period gets activated. Well, we'll keep you updated from the streets of Varanasi of how the political battle is shaping up and what the voters have to say about it. The final results will only come out on the 4th of June. But before that, keep watching DD India for all latest. With camera person Sanjeev, this is Deepika reporting from Varanasi.
And let's take a look at other stories making news. India's Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar addressed the Foundation Day of ICMR National Institute of Traditional Medicine in Belgavi, Karnataka on Monday. The Vice President emphasized on the importance of investments in research and development. He also highlighted that India is poised to emerge as the epicenter of research globally, and ICMR has set the foundation towards this goal. Indian Army has collaborated with the Indian Oil Corporation Limited for demonstration of trials of hydrogen fuel buses. A memorandum of understanding MOU was signed on Monday between the Indian Army and the IOCL in presence of Chief of the Army Staff General Manoj Pandey and Indian Oil's Chairman Shrikant Madhavvedya. In a tragic incident, a massive fire broke out at a child care unit in East Delhi on Saturday night. The fire claimed the lives of at least 7 babies, while 5 other babies are undergoing treatment, who have received minor burn injuries. Delhi police has detained the medical facility's owner, who had absconded after the fire broke out. Gujarat government suspended 5 officials, including 2 police inspectors and civic staff, on Monday for negligence related to the Rajkot game zone fire. The fire at a game zone in Rajkot on Saturday evening resulted in several deaths, including 4 children. Sheikh Nahyan bin Mubarak Al Nahyan, Minister of Tolerance of the UAE, highlighted the friendly relations between India and the United Arab Emirates. He underscored the decades-old ties between India and the UAE. Speaking during an award ceremony in Dubai, Sheikh Nahyan lauded the significant contributions of the Indian community to the UAE's development and economic progress.
Indian professionals and business people have come to the United Arab Emirates, bringing their expertise and acumen and contributing to our national development efforts. We recognize the important contributions that people from India have made to our country, just as we hope that India recognizes the economic and cultural opportunities.
And still to come on DD India News Hour. India's domestic stock market indices, the Sensex and Nifty at record highs. Kolkata Knight Riders beat Sunrisers Hyderabad by 8 wickets to win its 3rd Indian Premier League title. In Roland Garros, Spain's Carlos Alcaraz through to 2nd round, while Britain's Andy Murray crashes out in the opening round.
As India decides in the world's largest election,
we help you feel the pulse of the nation.
I am Sakal Bhatt.
I am Shubhendu Ghosh.
This election season, join us on a journey of India.
We are in Assam. This is the tea city of India.
From down south, Tamil Nadu.
Discover the colors of democracy.
Gateway to northeast of India.
Coastal state of Kerala. Watch Poll Pulse on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj. The 77th session of the World Health Assembly began on Monday in Geneva, Switzerland, and brings together global health officials, including officials from India. India will showcase its success stories in healthcare. India has undertaken initiatives such as digital public infrastructure, universal health coverage, and public health emergency preparedness and response. India to display its Arogya Maitri disaster management cube, an indigenous portable hospital for emergencies. This year's theme is All for Health, Health for All, wherein global delegates and experts discuss current and future priorities for public health issues of global importance. The Walk the Talk Health for All Challenge returned on May 26 to Switzerland's Geneva for a healthy kickstart to International Yoga Day. Indian Union Health Secretary Apurva Chandra and World Health Organization's Director General Tedros performed yoga asanas at the Walk the Talk event along with other senior officers of India delegation. The event was organized by India, United Nations Geneva and World Health Organization in Geneva. Well, we have Giles Gibson for more on this. Joining us from Rome, Giles, 77th World Health Assembly is being held in Geneva, Switzerland. The theme of this year is All for Health, Health for All. Now, what all is expected from there when it comes to decisions on health goals and strategies?
Well, that slogan really suggests a sense of togetherness, right? A sense of unity in the WHO, but that is really not the case when it comes to these negotiations to try to develop a treaty in terms of how the world as a whole is going to respond to the next major global pandemic as COVID-19 really starts to recede into the background. Negotiations have been going on since 2021 to try to build out this treaty, looking at things like individual countries, how they can identify emerging pathogens like new coronaviruses, for example, and then alert the authorities in Geneva, alert the WHO about those pathogens as soon as they possibly can. Also lots of discussions around how to share resources once the world potentially has to respond to another pandemic. Of course, during the coronavirus pandemic, there was so much criticism about this inequality in terms of the response. So wealthy nations having a lot more access to things like vaccines and tests compared to countries in the developing world. Now, it's not exactly clear why these countries, the members of the WHO, have not been able to come together and organize an actual draft of this treaty. The hope was that they could get one together, a draft that would be then discussed during this week in Geneva. But we've been hearing that behind the scenes, the US, a very large donor, of course, to the WHO, had concerns around intellectual property and sharing of vaccines. And also we understand there were some tensions about the fact that some countries believed that there was no real enforcement mechanisms built into some of the early drafts in terms of countries who don't actually comply with this treaty. So for now, those negotiations will continue into the coming months, but they've not managed to get a draft together for this week's events in Geneva.
All right. How significant this would be for India, who will highlight its universal coverage through Ayushman Bharat, public health emergency preparedness and digital health transformations, and will also showcase the Arogya Maitri disaster management cube, which is an indigenous portable hospital.
Yeah, that cube has been developed by the Indian Air Force. Essentially what it is a field hospital that can be built with more than 70 different boxes, more than 70 different components, and it can actually be airdropped into hard-to-reach areas. So this is something that could be deployed, of course, incredibly usefully in terms of disaster management. So you could deploy this field hospital into areas that have been affected by earthquakes or hurricanes or things like that in order to get a field hospital up and running as quickly as possible. I think also just looking at this week's agenda in terms of the World Health Assembly, I also wanted to highlight the issue of funding, because we have the World Health Organization launching what's known as its first ever investment round. So the organization trying to change the way that it gets funding, and in particular how it gets funding sort of in advance. So you have Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, the head of the WHO, saying that the funding structures in the past have been unpredictable, reactive and tightly defined. And what he wants to do now is change the way the organisation is funded.
All right, thank you so much, Giles, for your analysis. India's benchmark equity indices, the BSE Sensex and Nifty, has hit new record highs in early on Monday, driven by a rally in global markets and positive investor sentiment days ahead of country's election result. The 30-share BSE Sensex surged 436 points to an all-time high of 76,009, while the NSE Nifty went up by 103 points to hit a new lifetime peak of 23,110. Whereas Asian shares remained firm on Monday after US stocks bounced back, Tokyo's Nikkei 225 added 0.7% and the Kospi in Seoul jumped 1.2%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng reversed early losses, gaining 0.7%. On to sports, Kolkata Knight Riders lifted their third trophy in the Indian Premier League with a crushing 8-wicket win over Sunrisers Hyderabad in a completely one-sided final on Sunday. Having lost the toss, KKR produced a clinical effort with the ball to dismiss Sunrisers for 113, the lowest ever total in an IPL title clash. Kolkata chased down the target of 114 with as many as 57 balls to spare. For KKR, Venkatesh Iyer was the top scorer with an unbeaten 52 runs, followed by Ramanullah Gurbaz, who scored 39 runs. Andre Russell scalped 3 wickets for the winning team, while Mitchell Starc was declared player of the match. For Sunrisers, skipper Pat Cummins was the highest scorer with 24 runs. On to tennis now. Third seed Carlos Alcaraz made a winning start in his bid to claim a first French Open title on Sunday. The Spaniard defeated American J.J. Wolf 6-1, 6-2, 6-1 without any issues on his troublesome arm. Last year's semi-final, he arrived at Roland Garros with only 4 matches under his belt on clay due to right forearm problem that forced him to skip Monte Carlo. Barcelona and Rome, with his Madrid title defense, also derailed by the problem. Having admitted he still had lingering worries and sporting a compression sleeve, the 21-year-old Spaniard drew a few gasps from the crowd on Philippe Chartier when he dropped serve in the first game of the contest, but he responded instantly. Under grey skies, Alcaraz quickly doubled his advantage in the contest and then raced ahead 3-0 under the roof in the third set, after rain began falling before closing out the match when Wolf sent a shot long. A Doraemon drone show lit up the skies over Hong Kong's Victoria Harbour on Saturday, attracting thousands of visitors at the Tsim Sha Tsui promenade. Drones formed various colourful patterns that resemble characters from Doraemon and his futuristic gadgets. The 100% Doraemon and Friends Hong Kong tour will start from July 13th to go on till August 4. That's all for this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.